Forrest. Forrest. You okay?
Yeah. Wait.
You passed out.
Oh, God. Sorry. Yeah, you were talking about, like, Marvel taking over Magic, and I got really scared.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, the Pro Tour next year is Marvel, and it's also going to be limited, and the trophy's going to be an Infinity Gauntlet.
All right. There's no way that's...
Distraction makers.
We just got an announcement that in 2027...
Right. Which is just right around the corner.
Yeah, they're going to add or are investing in a Magic Limited Championship, which honestly sounds pretty good. But they also, announced that they are going to be doing their first draft top 8,
Right.
on the Pro Tour in, I don't know, as long as I can remember. Like it hasn't been a thing in, probably decades.
I mean, we were just looking, and yeah, within at least, I think, the last 10 years, there hasn't been like a draft as a premier format.
There could be a connection here between, signing a licensing deal with a big IP like Marvel, and then Marvel wanting to have more of a collaboration with Magic and put Marvel plus Magic on the biggest stage, which theoretically is the Pro Tour outside of content creators. And so, the Pro Tour next year, especially Pro Tour Marvel Superheroes, it's going to be limited. How do you ensure that Marvel is going to be the most featured part of that tournament? It's that you have to make the tournament limited so that the set is featured prominently, and that all of the cards in the top 8 will be Marvel cards.
It does seem like a really weird move for them to go so deep and far into representing Marvel at the Pro Tour in this way. I mean, either you'd have to have a really, really established data showing that players are really interested in seeing this, or there has to be ulterior motives, right? And I don't mean this in like a seedy way as much as it's like, yeah, you want to make sure that you're looking good for your licensing deals, and you want to make sure that you're going to secure future licensing deals with other companies.
The other thing that's going on in sort of the limited sphere, the influence that Universes Beyond is having on Magic in limited, is that we're getting these smaller sets. Spider-Man was a small set, and alongside that, we're getting pick 2 draft instead of the usual you have 8 players and you pick 1 and pass the pack. Well, part of the reason why they would do this is that they're trying to figure out how to get more players to play draft. And if you have a commander pod of 4 people, you have to do sort of this pick 2 format in order to even make the draft functional. I should functional in quotes because it doesn't function similar to 8-player draft does. So let's talk a little bit about some of the consequences of the pick 2 format.
Right. So I'm not, a pro limited player, but I like my fair share of drafting games. And the immediate consequences I can see from pick 2 is generally that you're just going to have a more consistent draft. And draft is its most popular format. That's because I think it's like the variance is what makes it higher skill, floor and ceiling overall than constructed play. But what happens when you're able to draft 2 cards at once, it means that, if we're going to go with the BREAD acronym, right, of bomb, removal, evasion, and the A, and then duds.
Yeah.
Whatever the A is.
Everything else. And then duds.
What happens is that oftentimes I think that you're able to draft your bomb, and then you can also draft some sort of a supplementary thing. And it doesn't have to just be a bomb, right? But the fact that you can draft 2 cards for your particular archetype means that you're able to slot in that archetype much faster, or it means that you're able to have more opportunities for what archetype you're going to draft into for a longer period of time. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. This is sort of that thing where games exist on the spectrum of how much consistency you generally want them to have. But draft has worked a particular way for so long, and now all of a sudden this is adjusting that consistency in ways that they haven't adjusted before.
If you just stop and think about, like, okay, let's say we open a pack and it has 2 very good cards. One of them happens to be like a mythic rare bomb or something, and then has one of the best pieces of removal. Well, guess what? You get to take both of those cards. And that has like some serious consequences for the power level of particular decks if in relation to that someone else opens a pack and they don't have that opportunity. So I think it also just sort of like solidifies players into archetypes very quickly. Well, again, you could take the bomb that you open up in your deck or in your pack, and then you can also take a signpost uncommon that might even go along with that bomb. And so I can see a big disparity happening between the decks that are just at the table based on the variance that's happening, where when 8 players are drafting and picking 1, you have a lot more opportunities to kind of smooth out those problematic situations that you get put in.
What we're seeing now, though, is that I believe Wizards has stated that moving forward, pick 2 draft is something that they're going to be exploring with future sets. I don't remember if they said all sets or just the smaller sets, but what we're seeing is they're starting, I mean, at least they seem to continue to be embracing these smaller sets. Spider-Man was a small set. We have TMNT that's coming up that's also going to be a smaller set. And I guess I'm not really sure why this was the time for them to implement the pick 2 draft, because I think that it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me to implement that, other than what you're saying is there, and what, you know, we're maybe sort of getting at is Wizards seems to be pushing the limited format more than they previously were.
I think the impact from Universes Beyond here is being felt because it's difficult to fill out a whole set with some IPs. Like, an ideal, I guess, sort of draft set has around 300 cards, and these small sets have less than 200 cards in them, and so you just don't get the same kind of variety in draft archetypes. And so again, you might end up with like one very powerful draft archetype, and if you happen to draft that one, you end up just sort of winning. With Spider-Man, that's like the green-red, or green-white. It's like a green-white archetype. And not to mention that like Spider-Man in particular has like a weird weight to it, because you're like, okay, well, there's so many good characters here. It has like an outsized number of like white cards than what a normal set would have. And these are all Universes Beyond problems, right? This is design that is sort of serving the IP crossover more than the actual good design of the set. Now, Spider-Man might be an outlier here. Maybe they're able to sort of like have more time to plan for something like TMNT, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And so maybe that'll end up being like a better set generally, but I think that like it needs to be almost perfect here in order to make the sort of pick 2 small set thing work without too many outliers, right? Of you sort of getting ahead in power level amongst the other players.
Yeah, I think a big issue with, touching on designing a set with draft in mind, but with smaller card pool, is it's a real big issue when you have all these very specific characters that players or people that like the particular IP have this impression of what they would play like. And so you want to be flavorful, but especially in draft, you need what, Wizards calls workhorse mechanics, right? You need these very specific mechanics that line up with these specific archetypes. Otherwise, draft really starts to fall apart. And so the smaller your card pool, the tighter your workhorse mechanics need to be in order to make up for that. However, that also means that you can't be as flavorful with some of your cards. I think it's a big reason why we're seeing, especially in the Spider-Man set, we haven't seen enough of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set, but I guess we haven't talked about it yet. Maybe we'll have a whole video talking a little bit more into that specific set when the mechanics start to be shown off a little bit more. But so far from what I've seen, it feels a lot of more of the same. Right. It feels a lot of like, okay, this is the card that ends up, I don't know, it does stuff with the graveyard. This is the card that does this. And like, it feels very by the books.
The thing that we had said, I think, trying to sort of steelman Universes Beyond generally and say like, hey, part of this could be a good impact on the game because designers will have to stretch their design muscles and they might be inspired by these outside IPs in order to create something really unique. That is not what we've been seeing. Final Fantasy, we saw it a little bit, but getting into like Spider-Man and things, it's been really by the book, kind of cookie cutter, lots of sagas, lots of double-faced cards, lots of legendary creatures, obviously. And that just kind of isn't really hitting any interesting design notes for us. That's not to say that they'll all be that way. We could, they could come up with something really interesting in Ninja Turtles or whatever. But yeah, the other issue with what's already been spoiled from TMNT is a lot of visiting the same character over and over again, but like kind of in different colors. Like we're getting a bunch of Leonardos, we're getting a bunch of like all of the turtles, right? And like when you're drafting and you sort of like see this, not only the same cards a lot more because the sets are smaller, but you're also just seeing a lot of the same characters a bunch. And I feel like that the microscope that the set gets put under when you're drafting that way, because you're opening so many packs all at the same time and passing them around, you start to see a lot of these trappings easier, right? Like where if the set was bigger and had a lot more variety, it doesn't feel so samey. or if you're just opening boosters one at a time or whatever, like you're not going to see that same kind of like, oh, I'm opening all these packs and now realizing how many of the same card I'm getting.
I was going to say, I think that there's a benefit when you end up creating a world from the ground up, is because you have to know what parts of the world are like going to be more of that workhorse mechanic that is like, that could be anything, right? That's a creature that you can define to make it feel like it makes as much sense as possible. But oftentimes it's just going to be like, oh, it's just a Tarkir soldier, right?
Yeah,
or whatever.
It can be kind of generic.
Yeah. But like Universe Beyond can't be generic. And so, yeah, you end up having multiple Leonardos, you have multiple Raphaels or whatever. I noticed this when I was opening some of the Spider-Man packs, and I got like 2 Gwen Stacy's. And I looked through them and I like had a hard time differentiating, where I was like, is that Gwen Stacy or is that this Gwen Stacy? And I didn't think that was going to be that big of a problem until I was actually opening the packs and I was like, yeah, okay,
There's a lot
I
of the
see
same.
this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's about it for the sort of limited section on this. Let's talk about standard for a minute. So somebody was asking Blake Rasmussen about where Wizards is getting their data from in terms of like Wizards has said standard's alive and thriving. Our sources tell us that that's the case. And then this Magic player is basically saying like, I don't really understand what you're talking about. Anecdotally, in my area, nobody's playing standard and they haven't for years. And, he's basically saying, I think he said he was in a big hub in Atlanta, and so he has like a lot of different stores that he goes to, and he's just like, none of this is happening. Like, there's no standard here. So I started doing a little bit of research because I was like, what could be going on? And I think there was a comment that had mentioned that their store has been reporting Commander events as standard events.
So there's something that we brought up in a previous episode. I think the whole episode was all about this, but called Goodhart's Law. Goodhart's Law is when a measure becomes the target, it ceases to be a good measure. So a great example of Goodhart's Law. A bunch of rattlesnakes were going loose. They were going crazy. They were biting kids and stuff. So they made a law that said, hey, or not a law, but the government got together.
They made a bounty.
They made a bounty for rattlesnakes. So they said, every time you bring a rattlesnake over to us, a dead rattlesnake, we'll give you some money. So what people started doing is they started breeding rattlesnakes. And it got even worse.
Got more snakes.
And that's kind of what we mean, is that oftentimes once a measure becomes that target, it ceases to be a good one, because now you're sort of you're putting pressures on that, right? You're creating a new incentive for someone else to manipulate that. And so if you're saying, hey, you are a good store if you have more engaged players, guess what you're going to do when you report your engaged players.
One way or another. The other part of this too is that like being a Wizard Play Network store has tons of benefits. They have like grant programs available to stores to help renovate their game spaces. They have promos and special product for big events. They'll let you run big events like big tournaments and things. Like not being in the Play Network is a huge detriment to your store. And so these stores, like, I don't even blame them for trying to make sure that they can remain in this program.
Well, especially because it probably was much easier to be in that program back in the day, right? Prior to Magic Arena, prior to Commander being the primary format that people played, that was the way that you played. So if you were interested in Magic, it was more likely that you had these engaged players and that people weren't scattered about playing it in these different ways.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say too is that I'm not 100% sure that this is still what is going on. This was just the most recent data or the most recent requirements we could find online. It's possible that Wizards has changed these requirements that allow engaged players to be counted as Commander players, but whatever's out there online at this point, I have not seen an update to this. So if anybody knows anything about this in the comments, please let us know. But as far as we know, it's quite possible that stores could be reporting standard events that are actually Commander events. And that would give Wizards a really skewed picture of actually what's going on at the local game store level.
Right. And I think at the same time, though, it doesn't necessarily benefit Wizards to try and adjust this. They'd probably have to adjust their program to try and make sure they're collecting that data and that it's more verifiable. But otherwise, Wizards probably does want to make sure that these engaged players are playing standard, draft, and sealed, right? Because those are the specific players that are going to be coming back every 2 months, reinvesting, buying new product.
Yeah,
where Commander players aren't as guaranteed to do that. Oftentimes, Commander players are going to come in, they're going to buy the product that they feel like buying, or they're going to buy singles for their decks. They're going to come into the hobby once every, little while. Now, this is a generalization. I think now we're starting to see many more people that are very invested Commander players that are playing very often, buying every new product, etc. But previously, I guess still now, you don't have to buy that new product when playing Commander. You have to with all these other formats.
Exactly. And I think that, that's why they would pick those specific formats as to be counted as engaged players, because those are the players that are actively buying the newest sets that are coming out. So I guess the good news at the end of all this is that Wizards found a way that, you can be a pro player and not have to engage with Universes Beyond. Because you can just play the limited sets that aren't Universe. You just play Draft.
Well, unless you want to participate with the big limited tournament that's Marvel only.
Oh.
Then you have to.
Right. That's a good point. I was thinking of just the limited championships. But even then, you probably have to engage with Universe Beyond sets that'll be coming out in 2027.
In fact, if you're going to participate in the 2027 limited championship, you actually have to play every Universes Beyond thing as you're going to try and qualify, because you're going to have to play the Star Trek set. You're going to have to play the Lorwyn. Well, Lorwyn, everyone wants to play Lorwyn.
That's true.
Yeah. Honestly, I blanked on all the other Universe Beyond sets. I was like, I know Star Trek was there.
Star Trek.
What's the other
one? Marvel superheroes.
I know, there's two others. What are they?
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, that's okay. What's the fourth one? If you enjoyed listening to us talk about limited and stuff, please feel free to give us a like and a subscribe, maybe a comment down below.
If you want to continue the conversation, you can join our Discord. The link is in the description. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Wait, goodbye.
Oh, yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, I know what it is.
What is it?
Well, I know now.
What is it?
It's The Hobbit.
Oh, okay. That's wild, because that's probably the one that I'm most excited about.
Yeah, it's like the only one that's interesting. You can't remember it.